Welcome back. This is to the specialists who should be on the phones right now. The number is 1-800-447-9492. Our 800 number for the questions and answers is 1-800, lost that number, 1-800-743-4647. Okay. We had a question from a caller in southern Illinois. The question is, considering the high cost of pond construction, can natural bodies of water such as ponds, lakes, be used? And also, could you use strip pits or strip mining for aquaculture production? We've done at Purdue University and University of Illinois, and then at Southern Illinois University, we've done some work with cage culture. And cage culture, in this instance, provides an opportunity in those types of bodies of water that may make those usable. You do have large sources of water, large resources of water here in the Midwest. Indiana, for example, has over 40,000 acres of farm ponds or borrow pits. Illinois, I think, has double that. So there's a tremendous resource available for aquaculture. Cage culture is a good alternative or a good option for those types of water. There is some advantages and disadvantages of cage culture, and I think Jim Ebling will get into those a little bit later. Okay, we have Joe Morris and Don Garling on the line now, and I'd like to ask Joe Morris a question. Joe, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Joe, welcome. We enjoyed your videotape. There's a question asked. We have Joe Morris on the line, but Terry Kay's on the screen. We'll get that taken care of. Joe,
yes.
You look a little bit different there. Joe, the question was, how do you learn how to do the spawning of the hybrid striped bass?
Well, there are several very good publications out there. There's one good publication from the American Fisheries Society at Southern Division. For about, I think it's $30 or so. It's from the American Fisheries Society, and it gives you many of the major ideas behind striped bass culture. But there's also very good extension publications written, and a lot of them have come out of the Southern Regional Aquaculture Center, and there will be one coming out from North Central Regional Aquaculture Center.
Okay, Joe, do you plan on doing any sort of workshops, maybe not you in particular, but do you know of any workshops where someone could go and do more of a hands-on spawning of these hybrid striped bass?
Yes, they're from the North Central Regional Aquaculture Center. We're having one being planned as we speak now. There probably will be one being held in '94 at Southern Illinois University, which will be a 2-day workshop. Okay,
Joe, thanks a lot. We're going to now go to Don Garling at Michigan State University. We have a question on yellow perch, and the question was, yellow perch is a relatively new species being produced from an aquaculture standpoint here in the Midwest. Don, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, did you hear that part of the question?
All I heard was that yellow perch is new in being produced in the Midwest.
Okay, so you've caught most of it. The question was, has the economics really been determined for yellow perch production like it has for some of the more established species like the rainbow trout or the channel catfish?
Unfortunately, it hasn't been. The reason for that is that very few people in any given state are involved in yellow perch culture at the present time. In addition, a number of people are raising them in different ways. As you saw in the video that we produced, the raceway culture system that they're using is only being done by, at the present time, one individual, Bayport. A couple people, as you'll see later on, are raising perch in ponds, and a few people are raising perch partially in ponds, partially in closed systems. So the economics, unfortunately, is not well documented to date.
Thank you, Don. Would you hang on just for a second? There is another question. What is your opinion on the type of feed that's used right now for yellow perch? Do people use a floating or a sinking feed for yellow perch? And you do have quite a bit of experience in the fish nutrition. Could you go into that question I tried to answer a little bit earlier in more depth?
Most of the people use sinking feeds. The yellow perch likes darker conditions than light conditions, so it does not tend to come to the surface on a bright day. And if you had a floating feed, you would have the feed away from where the fish would normally be. So they frequently use a sinking feed to be able to get it down to where the perch are going to be, either in their ponds or in their raceway tanks. It also, currently, most of the people are using trout feeds, although through work of Paul Brown at Purdue University and myself at Michigan State, a couple of companies now are making a perch feed that is closer to the needs of the yellow perch than the trout feeds. This is a specialty feed, however, and it's generally available through the producers of the feed, but it's not something you're going to find conveniently in your feed stores.
Don, are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay. What sort of protein levels are most of the producers of yellow perch using right now?
Well, on the commercial feed that's being produced specifically for the perch, the protein level is around 30. Some of the people have used trout feeds that have protein levels even up into the 40 to 50% range, which we feel is a little higher than they need, and consequently the diet's a little more expensive than it has to be able to produce them efficiently.
Okay, thank you, Don. If you'd hang on the line, we may get back to you in a few minutes. Joe, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Joe. In your opinion, what do you think will happen or is going to happen to the hybrid striped bass industry?
Lost Joe.
Okay,
well,
I think we've lost Joe.
No, yes, I'm still here.
Okay, thank you, sir.
As the industry grows, there's quite a few new operations going on along the Atlantic seaboard and the Gulf of Mexico. What's going to happen is that it will grow. But like with the catfish industries and a lot of other industries in agriculture, as the industry grows, the price will probably be going down, and we've been seeing that as the price has been reaching as the production has been reaching around 7 million pounds, the price that the producers have been obtaining has been going down in price for the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Hang on, Joe, I have a question. I know you worked down in Mississippi on a catfish farm for a few years before you went back to school. What do you see happening with the catfish industry right now?
Well, the catfish industry is rebounding back. If I recall correctly, the last USDA figures that's come out, the price has come back. I think the price has stabilized, and it has gone up, I think, last about 10, 15 cents a pound as it was in that year ago this time. So it has stabilized, and there is an increased amount of production still going on, but it's going to be a cyclic event in all these species as the industry progresses along.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Remember that 800 number is 800-743-4647. Okay. I have a question right here. Excuse me. Okay. Okay. This is our second call from Hawaii. I'll be sending one on crawfish and catfish down to you, Michael, in a little bit later on. But the caller asked, what's the mortality rate associated with switching from live feed to commercial feed for yellow perch? I need to get Don Garling on the line. Don, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Don, let me read this question for you again. The gentleman from Hawaii called and asked, what's the mortality rate associated with switching from live feed to commercial feed for yellow perch?
One of the nice things with the yellow perch is that once they reach a size of about 3/4 of an inch, they are very easily converted from live feeds to the types of pelleted feeds that are being fed. And it's not uncommon to have 90 to 95% survival of those fish being converted from the wild state, if you will, feeding on natural feeds to the pelleted feed. The larger the fish gets, the little more difficult it gets to do that conversion from the live feeds to prepared feeds, but we still see typically over 90% survival of the fish, even to fish that are in the 4 to 6 inch range.
Don, I've heard the term thrown around a little bit called green water. Is that a pretty common, could you define what green water is a little bit for us?
Sure. Green water is a technique that's been used by some of the researchers, Fred Binkowski at University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, to start off the first feeding larval perch when they're about 5 millimeters or so in length on live feeds, and he can get success rates of 10 to maybe 20, 25% on getting the first feeding perch fry to feed. Most of the commercial people who are currently involved, however, use ponds to raise their fry instead of using this technique because it does require a bit more time and effort at a time when they may also be busy doing other kinds of things.
Okay. Well, thanks, Don. We're still getting quite a few calls on channel catfish. I'm not sure if this is possible, but if John Jensen or Michael Masser could try calling their 800 number, it's 447-9492, then we might try to answer a couple more. Okay. We're going to move on now and show another videotape. This is a tape on cage culture from Ohio State University. Jim Ebling and Dave Smith, who is owner of Freshwater Farms of Ohio, produced a videotape on cage culture. And as I mentioned earlier, cage culture does offer some opportunities for someone just getting into aquaculture and has some existing bodies of water.
Cage culture of fish uses existing water resources, but encloses the fish in a cage or pen, which allows the water, but not the fish, to freely pass through it. As with any production scheme, cage culture has advantages and disadvantages that need to be kept in mind. Some of the advantages of cage culture include many types of water resources can be used, including lakes, ponds, reservoirs, strip pits, streams or rivers, which otherwise could not be harvested. Second, one does not have to invest a large amount of capital for construction or equipment, and can therefore use cage culture to get one's feet wet in aquaculture. Third, harvesting fish from a cage is as simple as netting them out. Fourth, fish are easier to manage and sample and observe during feeding. And finally, a potential fish farmer can produce fish in an existing pond without destroying its sports fishing potential. Cage culture also has some distinct disadvantages. Feed needs to be complete and provide all the necessary proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, and minerals. Low dissolved oxygen can occur within a cage and not affect fish free in the pond. Diseases need to be identified and treated rapidly. Vandalism is a problem that has to be anticipated and precautions taken. It's important to remember that cages do not increase the amount of fish that can be produced in a pond, but simplifies management techniques.
Freshwater Farms is basically a trout farm. We are raising perch and hybrid bluegill for food fish, and we raise a lot of stocking fish also for stocking private ponds. But our main part of our business is trout for food fish that we hatch here, raise up to fingerling size here, transport out to the cages, out the gravel quarries, raise them to full size there, and when the orders come in, we transport them live to our processing plant 6 miles north of here, and then we direct market to retail stores and restaurants. This is the main place where we do the grow out of the trout and perch. And we've got about 160 acres of water here on about 290 acres of property. Okay. Well, what we need to do first here, Jim, is we're going to take some of the feed out to the island that we've made. We get most of our feed in bulk now in this 12-ton bin. We're using the Purina floating number 5 feed that we use out here. We're also using some of the Ziegler sinking feed, but we've used this for most of our production out here.
Okay.
If you give me a hand, we'll take this on out to the boat.
All righty.
You know, one of the advantages of what we have here with the indoor facilities and the cage culture facilities are that we have alternating cycles that complement themselves. For our trout, we're able to over-summer the trout fingerlings here till they're large enough to stock out in the fall, raise those outside until spring, and then those are sold out. Now, conversely, then we're doing an alternate cycle with warm water fish like the perch and the hybrid bluegill, so that we're overwintering the fingerlings here, and then those are stocked out into the cages in the summertime. So we're not trying to fight Mother Nature, we're trying to work with the temperature ranges that are optimum for those two different types of fishes. We have our own aeration system out here, a power system, alarm system. We have space for 16 cages. We have 14 out here right now. We have various depths to cages. In the summertime, we tend to use the shallow cages for the warm water fish, but we do have deep cage designs so that we can use some of the cool water species in extended season through the summer. Basically what we have are independent floatable units that are attached to a floating island that we use to service the cages and the fish. They are built so that they are towable from shore. We use that for stocking the fingerlings out longshore. They're towed out the island. And when harvest time comes, for the majority of the harvesting is done by towing the cage back to shore, emptying it out, putting them on the live haul truck, bringing them back to storage facilities we have here at this farm. Our outdoor 18,000-gallon tanks are used for that purpose, or taken straight to the processing plant when the orders are called for them. In these cases, we're using a black plastic netting. We're using half-inch netting. We find anything smaller than that gets plugged up with algae too quick in the summertime. But we do have the smaller mesh around the top so they don't flip the feed out.
Okay.
The thing in the center of the cage, of course, is a feeding ring to help with that problem also. Of course, that's our bird netting to keep the herons and other resident fishing birds out of the fish, and that seems to be working pretty well. We do have aeration for each of these, even though in cage culture, presumably you get your fresh air and in the water from outside the cage. We like to have a backup. This is more of our insurance policy to make sure that things are optimum all the time. Although we do have to scrub the cages occasionally because we want to keep that water exchange going through the cage. Now, we've experimented with several types of cage design out here. Thanks, Van. Now, these cages are filled with rainbow trout right now. The production cycle for perch is a little different from trout in that it takes a year and a half to go from the egg up to the marketable size. What we're doing here is the spring is a normal hatching season for the yellow perch. So they are hatched, put out in our production ponds to raise up to fingerling size during the summer, brought back indoors to be for the continued production over the winter time so that we have a nice 4 to 6 inch size fingerling by the next spring. And then those are stocked out into cages for the final grow out.
Freshwater Farms of Ohio is a commercial-size cage culture operation, raising trout, yellow perch, and hybrid bluegill. The same principles, although, can also be used by a smaller grower in his or her farm pond without a large investment. Cage culture of fish is an excellent alternative rural enterprise and is a good first step in getting one's feet wet in aquaculture.